My name is Allison Reed. I remember the exact moment my mother destroyed me in front of 300 people. The ballroom was beautiful that night. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen rain. White roses climbed golden arches. Everything was perfect. Everything was expensive. Everything was a lie. My sister Brooke was getting married. The wedding cost $490,000. I would learn later that this number meant everything. But on that night, standing in a blue dress near the back, I only knew that my mother was about to say something terrible. She stood on stage with a microphone in her hand. My father sat at the front table, proud and smiling. Brooke stood nearby in her white dress, looking beautiful and happy. The groom was there too, surrounded by his wealthy family. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. My name is Allison Reed, my mother said, and I want to tell you about my daughter. The room went quiet. She's always been a lost cause, my mother continued. People laughed. It was a light laugh, the kind people use when they think something is funny, but also true. We tried everything with her. But some people are just born to disappoint. I felt the weight of 300 stares. I felt pity. I felt amusement. I felt like I was disappearing. My father raised his champagne glass and smiled. That's when something strange happened. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I didn't run away. I smiled back. I looked around the room. And I started watching. I watched my father's jaw get tight. I watched my sister refuse to look at me. I watched the groom's parents exchange worried looks. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. That's when I realized the truth. The insult wasn't just about hurting me. It was about my mother and father trying to look better than they actually were. It was about them hiding something. My sister Brooke had always been the favorite. Growing up, our parents gave her everything. Private tutors, elite boarding school, a degree from Wharton University, a fiancé whose family owned half of Palm Beach. Every dollar spent on her was called smart and strategic. I chose a different path. I studied finance, but I did it on my own. No family connections, no handouts. I built my own career. And for this, I became the mistake. My college fund disappeared. My parents said it was temporarily redirected. My gap year was irresponsible. My decision not to date rich men just to look good was immature and foolish. At family dinners, they would talk about Brooke's accomplishments like she was a business investment with excellent returns. When the conversation turned to me, everyone went silent. They thought my silence meant I was confused or stupid, but they were wrong. My silence was actually education. I was learning something they never understood. I was learning about debt. The wedding cost $490,000. That number stayed in my head during the entire celebration. I watched the florist arguing quietly near the bar about something important. I watched the wedding planner constantly checking her phone, stress written all over her face. I watched my father step outside 3 different times in 1 hour. This wasn't excitement. This was panic. During the cocktail hour, I heard the photographer whisper to someone, "The wire still hasn't cleared." That word, cleared, is important at weddings. It means money that was supposed to arrive hasn't arrived yet. It means something might be wrong. I looked at my father's face. There was sweat on his forehead. His laughter sounded fake. And then I remembered something that happened 2 months before the wedding. My father had asked me a strange question. Hypothetically, he said, how would someone get quick money without causing problems with audits and taxes? I had assumed he was asking for a friend. Now I understood. He was asking for himself. This wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a financial crisis disguised as a party. Later, in the bridal suite, I picked up a folder that had fallen from the vanity. Inside were contracts. I shouldn't have read them, but I did. The signature on the financing documents wasn't just my father's name. My mother had signed too, and they hadn't borrowed a small amount. They had taken a massive loan. The loan was backed by our family home, the house where I grew up. They had risked everything for a wedding. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened, because this meant something serious. If anything went wrong financially, the consequences wouldn't just be embarrassing. They would be catastrophic. We could lose the house. We could lose everything. At dinner, I watched the groom's father more carefully than anyone. He wasn't smiling like a proud family member. He was watching like a businessman doing calculations. When my father approached him, their handshake lasted too long. There was no warmth, only tension. I heard one sentence pass between them. You assured us everything was handled. That word, assured, meant my father had promised something. And those promises were connected to money and stability that they didn't actually have. I understood then that this wedding wasn't just about love or family. It was about business. It was about impressing investors who were pretending to be family members. If those investors discovered the truth about our family's finances, everything would collapse. I left the wedding and stepped outside. The valet line stretched down the entire block. Luxury cars, political donors, country club members. My parents had carefully chosen every person on the guest list. This wasn't a wedding. It was a marketing event. It was a performance designed to show the world that our family was rich and successful and stable. It was all fake. And they had spent $490,000 to keep the illusion alive. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I spent hours looking at public documents, property records, loan filings, business registrations. Everything is available if you know where to look. What I found was a pattern. 2 refinances in 6 months. A new company created just to manage wedding vendors. A high-interest loan that made no sense. My parents weren't rich. They were pretending. They were floating. They had borrowed money they couldn't pay back. And tonight's wedding had stretched the rope until it was about to break. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was the wedding planner. She thought she was calling my mother. We still haven't received the final payment, she said. The vendors are threatening lawsuits. I asked her questions carefully. Vendors were getting angry. If lawsuits started, my parents' assets would freeze. Banks would review their finances. Country club people would start whispering. Everything would fall apart. 2 weeks later, my parents invited me to dinner. This was unusual. My father poured the wine himself. My mother couldn't look me in the eye. Then my father said the words, "We might need temporary financial help." There it was, the lost cause daughter, the disappointment, the girl they had mocked at the wedding. Now they needed me. Now I was useful. They didn't apologize. They simply repositioned. Instead of treating me like a failure, they suddenly treated me like a solution. I listened quietly. Then I asked one question. What exactly are you asking me to secure? Their silence told me everything. They wanted me to give them money or help them borrow money. They wanted me to fix their problem. They wanted me to be useful. I agreed to help them, but not the way they expected. I told my father, I can review your entire financial situation and negotiate better terms with your lenders. They agreed instantly. They were so desperate that they didn't even consider that I might be doing this for reasons other than saving the family. They thought I was finally proving my worth. They didn't realize I was documenting everything. I was building protection. I was creating boundaries they could never cross again. The loan agreement had a dangerous clause. If my parents missed even one payment, the lender could demand all the money back immediately. And the deadline to make the first payment was very close. I asked my father why he hadn't told me about this clause. He deflected and changed the subject. That told me he either hadn't read the agreement carefully, or he had read it and gambled anyway, hoping nothing would go wrong. News travels quickly in wealthy circles. The groom's father found out about my parents' financial problems. He requested a meeting with me. Just me. He had discovered the refinancing. He understood that my parents weren't actually stable. He knew the wedding invitation had been a performance, and he wasn't happy. When people discover that a promise was built on lies, they react badly. My parents looked shaken when they found out he knew the truth. For the first time, they looked uncertain. The perfect image was starting to crack. A vendor filed a formal legal complaint. It became public record. Whispers started at the country club. My mother's charity board asked uncomfortable questions. The fake image was falling apart, and I hadn't said a single word. Truth was doing the work by itself. Brooke called me crying, but she wasn't crying because the marriage was in trouble. She was crying because the family's reputation was suffering. If his family thinks we're unstable, she said, everything will change. She wasn't worried about her marriage. She was worried about how her husband's rich family would see her. And for the first time in her life, she asked me for help. Not as a competitor, as someone who needed real assistance. I gave them a proposal. I would help fix the financial crisis, but only if they agreed to complete transparency. No more secrets. No more hiding truth. No more fake images. My father resisted at first. My mother hesitated. But eventually they signed. Because when pressure is applied correctly, even pride collapses. I negotiated with vendors. I reduced penalties. I structured payment plans. I stabilized the financial situation. And I did it all legally and strategically. Quietly. The more I fixed their problems, the clearer it became that they weren't incompetent. They were just reckless. They had prioritized image over reality. Word spread through the country club. But it didn't spread as gossip about failure. It spread as recognition of who had fixed everything. My name. The lost cause. Suddenly people greeted me differently at the club. The groom's father asked for my business card. Respect is a powerful currency. And it had shifted to me. My mother tried to apologize, but it wasn't a real apology. She said, I suppose you've always been capable. That's not sorry. That's just reframing the story so she didn't look as bad. But I didn't need her apology. Power had already moved. I could see it. I secured refinancing with better terms, lower interest rates, structured repayment that would work. The house was protected. Assets were shielded. But I added one condition. My parents could never use family assets as collateral again. No more leveraging the house to fund Brooke's lifestyle. Financial independence was mandatory. My father signed quietly. The groom's father called me into a private meeting. He said, You're the stable one. Just 4 simple words. But they were heavy with meaning. They confirmed something important. This wealthy, powerful man understood that my parents had misjudged me completely. They had underestimated me entirely. They had been wrong about everything. At a family gathering weeks later, my father introduced me differently. This is Allison, he said. She handled everything. No jokes, no mockery, just acknowledgement. And in his face, I could see regret. My sister asked me one simple question. Why didn't you expose us? Why didn't you tell people the truth about what we were hiding? I answered honestly, because I didn't need to. The truth came out by itself, and that was more powerful than anything I could have said. Silence is stronger than revenge. Silence is stronger than spectacle. At a charity event, my mother told the story of the wedding toast differently. She said she's always surprised us. She had corrected the story. She was trying to change how people remembered that night. And people listened. People believed her new version. I walked through the family house one afternoon. The same house my parents had almost lost. The house they had risked for a wedding. And I didn't feel angry. I felt distant. I felt separate. I had grown beyond needing their approval. Their opinion no longer defined me. At the next family event, my father raised a glass. But this time he said something different. To Allison, he announced, the one who saw everything before we did. No one laughed. Only respect followed. And I smiled. But I wasn't smiling for them. I was smiling for myself. I was smiling because the lost cause had never been me. The lost cause had always been them. Lost in their own image, lost in their own lies, lost in their misunderstanding of who their daughter actually was. The comeback wasn't about money. It wasn't about reputation changing. It wasn't about revenge or making them suffer. The real comeback was this simple truth. They no longer defined me. Their words couldn't hurt me. Their judgment couldn't limit me. Their approval wasn't something I needed anymore. I had built my own strength. I had built my own knowledge. I had built my own power. And when they finally needed me, I was strong enough to help them without being destroyed by them. The lost cause had always been the strongest one in the room. They just took a wedding disaster to finally see it.